Now I want to invite our panel up here on stage. Juan Carlos, JC Lopez, Director of Data and AI at Schibsted News Media, a company generally ahead of the curve when it comes to AI, also known for recently partnering with OpenAI, as we have heard several times today. JC. And then we have Irene J. Liu, Director AI Emerging Tech and Regulation at the International Fund for Public Interest Media, with a deep understanding of the economic conditions of the media industry. And lastly, but not least, Karen Rønde, CEO of Danish Press Publication CMO, the only organization in the world with a mandate to negotiate collective content license agreements with AI companies. Welcome to the three of you. And let's start with just small comments from you on the presentation we just had on the pro rata model. Let's start with you, JC. What do you think about possibilities in terms of the pro rata model?
Yeah, I think the idea behind having a system that allows to equally sharing either traffic or revenues is definitely good. I think the tech is available, so there's external vendors like ProRata and Human Native doing these sort of things. And we honestly also, as Schibsted or as publishers, there is also a possibility for us to do similar things, right? And we are open to discuss all of them. So yeah, we welcome those discussions.
Mm-hmm. Irene, comment from you?
Sure. I mean, I think that it's really interesting. I think that we're in an era of experimentation, and that there will be many different ways for content creators to hopefully find monetization opportunities. If we look at traditional ads, you have programmatic, and then you have direct sales. I think that this new ecosystem will have the same thing. I have so many questions for you, Josh, about many things, and my main question really is one of scale, mainly in terms of language, in terms of, because partnerships, choosing the right partners, when you say things like authoritative, quality, information sources, it really depends on context and local knowledge. This is a challenge that many tech companies have, and I will caveat this by saying that the organization I work for is really focused on media outlets in the global south. And so language, culture, understanding is a really important question as we think about how these technologies that are built primarily in the global north are going to manifest in the markets that we operate in.
Mm-hmm. And Karen, ProRata and your organization signed a letter of intent, a partnership. What motivated that? What do you see as the biggest potential advantage in collaborating?
From our perspective, AI is here to stay. We are super curious when it comes to AI and new technology because it brings new opportunities and also threats, but opportunities too. And here it was key to us that ProRata as a company acknowledged that what you do, that what we do, create content has a value. And that is pretty basic if we're going into a mutual beneficial partnership, that each party understands that we bring something to the table and we want to explore that.
Mm-hmm. And JC, let's get to it, because a lot of people here want to ask, because Schibsted has partnered with OpenAI, granted them access to your content and like major titles like VG, like Svenska Dagbladet, all the titles you have. But what drove that decision? What's the benefit for you in that?
Yeah, like you say, it's a lot of curiosity around the deal. We see it as two ways. So we've been working with AI for a while, as you noted, and then this allows us to also experiment quite rapidly, right? So it's a 2-year contract. We want to use it as a way of learning. We want to make the most of it. We have access to a very important actor in this area. So, why wouldn't we work with them and also work with our own development, our own apps and our own services by collaborating with them. From the other side, it's about also having a say on how our content is displayed through ChatGPT, being able to also have a bit of more control on what shouldn't we share, what should we share, And we, those two aspects were, crucial for us behind the partnership.
And then, as we have heard several times today, OpenAI only partners with one country so far, or one media company in each country. What about the other media companies in Norway, for instance? What was that part of your consideration?
But I guess that's a question for OpenAI, right? We, it's not an exclusive deal, not from our side and not from their side. And there's others, there are other actors out there, like like ProRata, or other, there's other vendors. So yeah, that's our view. We can still have a dialogue with other publishers if we want to join forces in certain activities. But if this opportunity comes to us, obviously, we need to evaluate it and make the most of it.
Okay, Karen, another approach than the partnering with OpenAI, for instance, is your approach, or the approach here in Denmark. You had a mandate to negotiate collectible deals with AI giants. They haven't really come to the table yet, as I understand it. What then, what now, what if they don't come to the table? Is that still the way forward?
It's a super interesting question. In Denmark, we choose, you can say, the collective approach. Because, of course, it's about business, that's why we're here, but it's also about democracy. And the democracy dimension is bigger than each of us as individual media outlets. The fight for free press, diverse press, engaged, informed citizens is just, a shared responsibility. And that is why we choose in Denmark to have the collective approach. And as soon as we got the AI mandates, we reached out to OpenAI. And they told us very frankly that they couldn't prioritize Denmark. They told us they were they had a very small news team, as just mentioned, and they didn't have the time to spend on Denmark. And of course, I told them, we know that you trained on Danish content, and law is law, and you need to abide by the law. They couldn't care less. That is reality. Then I reached out to ProRata AI. And of course, we have a lot of ongoing discussions, great discussions, fruitful discussions with ProRata, but also Talbot is there, Sphere is there, Miso AI. There's a lot of great technology companies out there on a global level actually acknowledge that content has a value and we need to work together. We need to create partnerships so we also in the future can create quality content.
So what about the tech giants that won't come to the table and won't acknowledge that they actually took the content? Is a lawsuit then the next step?
Yes, we asked the Danish Minister for Culture for help because OpenAI wouldn't on a voluntary basis come to the table, as you mentioned. So the Danish Minister for Culture appointed a mediator and OpenAI came back and said, we will not participate. Denmark is not a priority. So of course, a good question is, what is our next step? And the only tool so far we have in the toolbox is litigation. Mm-hmm. Because we can't accept that people or companies, global companies, are taking and using our content for free. So of course we need to set an example.
Mm-hmm. Irene, you're in the middle, basically, physically and in every way now, because you don't really have any skin in the game like these two. What's your take on this push and pull on going solo, trying to build collective strategies? What do you think?
I do have the benefit, I feel very lucky to not only be in the middle of these two esteemed co-panelists, but also to have the ability and the privilege to be able to look sort of at more holistically at the situation, right? And I think that, to me, a number of questions come up when we talk about the two different models. One is, with one-to-one deals, let's be honest, they are commercial transactions, meaning that they are intended to be able to get information and use that content for the product. It is also political calculation. There's a reason why it is a handful, one or two big media in each country. It's because they're the loudest. They're the ones who have the most leverage for policymaking and could make the most noise. So when those deals are made, it is intended to bring people on side. Another challenge with one-to-one deals is that there's a lack of transparency around lessons learned. What is gained on each side? What is exchanged, right? What is the quantum? What is the amount? And that becomes really challenging when you look across a market or across internationally between markets, right? I think that the collective approach is really valuable if you're thinking from a holistic perspective, because no single deal with OpenAI or Microsoft or Google is going to ensure the survival of any particular title. It's not going to happen. We've seen this with digital ads. Digital ads never compensated for the loss of physical ads in print papers. We're still trying to catch up. And in the markets that I operate in, it's minuscule, right? So I think that if we are thinking holistically, long-term economic viability of media, and also going back to who we're doing this all for, which is people, making sure that they have access to information irrespective of their income, ability to pay, and whatnot. If we treat journalism as a public good, then we need to think collectively around solutions, not only within this community, but also with other content providers and other purveyors of high-quality information.
Let's get back to that. I'll just let JC come back on this criticism as well, because as I understand it, it's a 2-year deal. You're learning a lot, but as Irene is saying, is this relevant for all of us? Are you leading the way for all of us? Or are you receiving these benefits for yourself, which is perfectly okay? It's a business, right? But what do you take on this?
Yeah, I think we're talking a lot about OpenAI, but there's other actors, like you said, right? So there's also Google and there's also X, and they are also, using data and scraping and doing all these things. And one of the things that we value of the partnership is that, this is the first actor of that size that actually comes to the table and wants to have a dialogue, and then, wants to remunerate the partners, right? So we see this as a good step forward in this type of dialogues. And we need to remember that this functionality around search, which is the one that provides the news, is very new. So it's just early stages, right? So it's just months old, not even a year old. And we expect this to change, right? So obviously we are reacting, but I believe it's early days, and hopefully this is a good step forward towards bringing more partners further.
And if I can just quickly say one thing on this, which is, it's not a criticism. I think that, news organizations need to experiment. It's part of how we learn. And I think that my only hope and request is for us to learn from the lessons of social media and others, is that we should share more about what we've learned with the community. I think that that's the only thing that I really hope that we can see come from this as well.
And super quickly, so Nikita had a great presentation this morning, and she did mention, the difference between, okay, are we going to spend time on a lawsuit, or are we going to try to move fast, right? So, and we think time is really crucial. Again, this service launched just months ago, and things are moving really quickly. So for us, it's also the ability to move as fast as these things are developing.
And Karen, I was just about to ask, what about?
We would also like to move fast, but we didn't have the choice. They took the choice. They rejected to negotiate with us, so we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice to learn from their technology. We don't have a choice to learn from each other. We don't have a choice to experiment with their services. They leave us with no choice. And that is why, of course, we are looking into, alternatives, and that we need to enforce our rights, because that is totally unacceptable. We know that Denmark is a small country, but still, law is law, and they need to abide by the law, sooner or later.
That's a lawyer speaking here.
Yeah.
But if you're not saying that this will save journalism, you're not waiting for the tech giants to, okay, we'll pay you, and the lawsuit will fix anything. What will be the fix? You're saying lots of alternatives. What do you actually believe in?
For example, we have a strong cooperation with Parata in place. We have a lot of meetings set up with Talbot, Sphere, AI, Miso AI, and a lot of newcomers. And we have also, inside the DPCMO, established, we call it the AI Nerd Committee. Because, as you said, we need to learn from each other. and time is of the essence. So we try collectively to share our learnings, our experience. Of course, we know we are competitors and we have a lot of history, but here we need to help each other, otherwise we don't have a chance.
Irene, you mentioned scale and something about having leverage to actually negotiate here. What does this mean for the smaller independent publishers? What can they actually do if they're stuck in some sort of litigation over here, or they can take deals if they're huge? What's the middle ground here?
I mean, I think you have to walk and chew gum at the same time. So you have to work on the regulatory front. You have to think about legal options to stress test the situation and not take everything at face value and just say, okay, well, we're once again the victims of unintended consequences, so let's just roll, right? I think we have to be proactive in this. And to me, I think many of the markets that we operate in, that I operate in as part of IFPIM, are in a similar boat to Karen, where you are, which is, they are not priority countries for these global companies. We see this in how they handle content moderation, trust and safety, how many people they deploy to ensure the content is high quality in a market like the US versus a market like the Philippines, right? What I am excited about is that I do think that generative AI and where we are headed presents a new opportunity to break out of network effects and to build products that are actually good quality. So you're not beholden because, well, all my family and friends are on this platform, so I'll just deal with it not being very good. Now we have the opportunity to say, no, in the same way that we've seen with ride-hailing apps and shopping apps, who the drivers are, how many drivers they are they in my language, do they provide the groceries and the ingredients that I want? All of these things matter, and because generative AI is so focused on context, language, the depth of information, there's a whole opportunity to completely reimagine. And so to me, the solution is build. The news industry, content creators should be building and leading the way and building partnerships outside of this moat to think about it. And one last point on this, which is the reason why there's so much brand love for these products is because they are a tool that you can use for your whole life, right? For every aspect. I go to Google because I can find out about movie theater times and also how to get here from my hotel, right? We can't think about only news. We have to think broader. Otherwise, we're going to lose this battle.
JC?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And Gard mentioned this earlier in his talk, right? So we don't expect ChatGPT to be the savior and to bring the traffic to us, right? We know that's a lost battle. So for us, what's important is to really take on that fight against them. Even if they're our partner, we have just a tiny bit of time to come up with tools and experiences that match what they have and what others have. And we started that journey earlier, and we just need to continue to move as fast as possible, regardless of that partnership, because otherwise we won't remain sustainable. So I think you're spot on that comment.
Mm-hmm. And will you share the lessons?
Absolutely. I mean, you saw Gard's presentation, right? So we are happy to, we come to these places, we share, and we share also locally. We are very open on the, the prototypes and the services. So yeah, absolutely.
And Karen, do you see this happening in Denmark as well, with the Danish publishers building something instead of partnering with the global?
Well, I think we should look into all options. We have just entered into a letter of intent with the Danish language model, looking into AI models, and we will see. We will start on working on a pilot project. So hopefully, if we are fast and curious, and and focused at least, yes, definitely, we need to build something on our own.
And in terms of sharing, we created a Norwegian language model, which is open source, and we're working on a voice language model as well that we want to open source, exactly for that, right? It's like when we do things like this, we also want to, make it available and, allow us to compete in at least as best as a level as possible.
And since we have some knowledge here in the panel on something outside the Nordic countries, because we have heard a lot in the last 2 days, which is really inspiring about us in the Nordics being ahead, and we have got a lot of praise. But Irene, do you see that as well as the Nordics having something maybe also in these models of collaboration that could be global transferable, or is it the other way around? Should we learn maybe from other areas, low resource languages as well?
I mean, I think I would love to see more collaboration between the Nordics and the global south markets that we're operating in. I think that some of the fundamentals are very different. Media is subsidized here in a way that doesn't exist. The populations have more means to pay for news. I think that, so therefore you can have more innovation, more diversity in terms of different business models and around how news is produced and disseminated. So I think that there are differences, but there is, I think, a huge opportunity. The examples of collaboration, newsroom to newsroom, is really exciting to me. I think that the Danish publisher CMO model is very inspiring, and I think that the counterparts that I have worked with in places like Indonesia and Brazil and South Africa want to hear from Karen specifically about how it worked, how it happened. And so yes, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to collaborate. I think that there should also, in terms of homegrown tech, there's a lot of inspiration to be had from Asia, because low resource languages have resulted in unicorns that are being built that are locally specific. Grab, Gojek, ride-hailing apps, UB Taxi in Mongolia, and so there are things that we can all learn together.
Okay, just we only have a few minutes left, so just from each of you, I would like a future maybe hope or possibility that you see for the collaboration or the relationship between publishers and AI actors. What future do you hope for, and what solutions do you see? I know you said many different, but can you point towards one way that you see this might work out in the future, Karen?
I would focus on collaboration. I think it's necessary because we're too small on our own. And this is a bigger fight. It's a fight for democracy. And it is a fight. You know, when I started working for the DPCMO 4 years ago, we always talked about collaboration, and we still do that. But I think something has changed during the last month, and we need to join forces in a total other scale that we have ever seen before if we're going to succeed.
So this is about all on board or else we'll sink?
Yes.
Okay. That doesn't really work, that metaphor, does it? But anyway, Irene.
Wholeheartedly +1 to what Karen said. I think that I would broaden it to say that we need to think like technologists and partner with every other content provider that is trusted in society. And I will include in this content like creators, individuals. We need to think about how we engage that community, because how many people are actually Gen Z in this audience? No one wants to raise their hand and be like the only one.
We have a few over here. The in-lab people.
I think that at least what I'm seeing is that the global South is leading the way in terms of user behavior for news, and they trust ordinary people at levels that are equal or higher than search and other sources. So we need to address that and broaden the tent.
JC?
Yeah, I think there's something fundamentally different in this AI revolution. And what I mean is that when search happened, Google came out with a search algorithm that was basically impossible to match. And nobody really could compete, right? It's like it took forever, and probably they still win on that battle. But AI is different, right? So ChatGPT came, and soon after it was Meta, and it was X, and it was DeepSeek, and the tools are there. The libraries are open. So what I mean is that we have the tools, we have the content. It puts us on a completely different playing ground as previous revolutions, right? So we need to think like that and think, okay, if this is available and we have the content, what can we do? It's a completely different starting point as the previous one. So that's our view, and this is how we want to tackle the revolution.
On that hopeful note, thank you so much to the panel for the discussion, which will continue, obviously, in this audience and next year as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.